Hi, this is Dr. Richard Ruling, here to share with you on the topic of our highest destiny is found in Christ's wedding parables. This is part 5. The first one was dispelling the most common myth. We've looked at different circumstances in the wedding parables. And this part 5 is how we open to Him and the idea of the wedding feast. Up till now, we've looked at several different circumstances. The idea that we need to watch and be ready. The end times will begin with a major event, actually an earthquake. We showed that in parts 2 and 3. And now if He knocks, then the earthquake is the knock, because that's how the Laodicean church ended, where Christ knocked in Revelation 3. We like that, meaning that He's always knocking at the door of our hearts, but that church where He knocked was materialistic. It's thought it was rich, increased with goods, but lukewarm and poor, blind, and naked is the description. So Christ wants us to have more than that and to be ready. The opening to Him, He says, I will come in and sup with Him. This is similar imagery to Luke 12, verse 37, when He will gird Himself and make us sit down to eat and will serve us. And He may actually show up like angels did to the shepherds. I don't really know at this point. But I do know that the wedding feast is not what we're thinking about. It's not cake and shake in heaven. It's the betrothal process on this earth, like Jacob was betrothed to Rachel for 7 years. You see, God got an ignorant bride at Sinai who worshipped a calf 40 days later, and we are not any better than that at this point. The description in Revelation 3 is poor, blind, and naked. Well, it's a bad combination for a knock at the door, because blind means you can't find the door. Naked means you can't open it if you did find it. And that is really addressed not to members, but to the agelos. The Greek word agelos means messenger. It's the messengers of the church. The pastors, the preachers, they think rapture. They don't think Passover. They don't think those are appointed times are necessary. But people are going to be surprised and shocked, and these pastors will be thrown out in the ultimate judgment, because if they're naked, in Matthew 22, the man without a wedding garment is thrown out. That's the pastor, okay? Because God's going to hold him responsible for not getting this, okay? So don't, maybe share this video with him, help him understand that God has a law that needs to be restored. Speaking of end times, Christ said to Matthew 17, verse 11, Elijah's to come and to restore all things. Well, what are those all things Elijah's going to restore? We see clearly in Malachi 4, 4, and 5 that it involves the law of Moses with statutes and judgments. Behold, I send you Elijah. Those statutes and judgments have a sevenfold emphasis in Ezekiel 20. And 7 is God's number. It's His signature. Revelation has 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 churches, 7 thunders, etc. So 7, there are 7 topics that have a sevenfold emphasis in the Bible that have been just kind of edited out by translators and preachers and so on. But those statutes and judgments, for example, are seen 7 times in Ezekiel 20, verse 11 to 24. And they include the idea of worship. So need to understand it better. And the Feast of Unleavened Bread, then, is the word not leavened, like cake is leavened, okay? And you can swallow it without even chewing. But this needs chewing, and there are 7 topics that we will need to consider for end-time truths. And if so, this is how the things are restored according to Elijah. In other words, the bride of Christ, who takes a covenant to be His, will be like an Elijah. This is different metaphors or symbolisms, but I believe that we can, basing a covenant on these 7 topics, we can be betrothed to Christ. The Bible weddings took a week. In Genesis 29, verse 27, Laban tells Jacob to fulfill Leah's week. And that week of 7 days is the same as the 7 days of unleavened bread. They mean the same thing. Unleavened bread is communion with Christ. Weddings are union with Christ by a covenant. Based on the Word. It's the same thing. We need to understand those topics. I'm offering you a book, Destruction of Jerusalem, which is the first sign, a heads up for what's coming. Go to Amazon.com, type in my name, Richard Ruling, and it introduces the wedding parables, explains them more fully than I can in these brief stories. And if you want the unleavened bread, this is it. The earthquake and the seven seals, the seven topics that have a sevenfold emphasis, and they have a contextual link to the seals in Revelation 6. I'll give you an example. The first one is when John heard thunder. It is really a link to Christ's name, to God's name. Okay, when John 12, verse 29 or 30, Christ says, "Glorify your name." People heard thunder. So anyway, we've covered more than I expected in this link, but thank you for considering it, and hope you find the books of interest. They're not expensive, but they can give you high destiny, ruler over all that he has if we understand the information, I believe. Thank you for giving a look. God bless you. See you at the